all this stuff, but I couldn't get down to get it if I had to. So
Yeah, I mean, I thought if anyone had the time
No, I
on their hands and they
appreciate
wanted a hard copy,
Real
and
quick,
for future reference too. Sorry,
Mr.
my
Julie.
Chair,
little home
you are
computer
live.
burning up.
You're fine. Just so you guys know, you are live.
Oh, okay. The Board of Port Wardens will come to order. I'm Gene Godley, the chair. I have with me tonight Willie Sampson, the vice chair, John Butler, and Scott Anderson. In addition to that, we have Kerry Berger, Kevin Scott, and I assume Tammy is someplace doing the recording. You have before you the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Yeah, thank you, John. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Scott, you're going to have to unmute if you're going to talk.
Oh, there we go.
But I saw your hand signal, so it's okay. We have the minutes of August the 25th, which I've reviewed and have no problems or changing, but does anyone have any comments? Or if not, can I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Move. Seconded by
Second.
Willie. All in favor? Aye. So the minutes are approved. We then have two findings of facts, which we've had before us from August 25th. And I have no comments on those. If no one else does, may we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Make a motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We now will move to old business. We have the first item, Mears Marina, and we had a revision, which we had questioned in last month about the placement of the platforms for the boat lifts, and that a revised drawing. And I have no concerns about that. Does anyone have any comments? If not, may I have a motion?
Make a
make a
motion to approve.
Motion approved. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed.
Gene, can I just point out for the record
Yes.
that there was no public comments received on that application?
Yeah, we can assume there are no comments received unless I indicate there were, which would be a couple down. So thank you, Kevin. Yeah, and because these are kind of came in at different times, please correct me, Kevin, if I missed something, because it's a little confusing at times. The next item of business is HHLP Annapolis Associates. We had no public comments. If there are no other comments, can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you, John. Moved, seconded,
I'll
and
second that motion.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. The next one is the Jose Calderon Bartolomeu, and we have had no further public comments on that. So if there are no comments of the Port Wardens, I'd like to have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Move approved, seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's approved.
Thank
The next one is the City of Annapolis, the Newman Street operation. And we've had two comments, one from Alderwoman Tierney, urging us to move forward as fast as possible. And the other one from Mike Keenan, who raises a lot of questions. And I guess this is a point for the Port Wardens. We can ask Lisa Greco of the city to respond to those comments, or we could ask those to be responded to in writing, or we can follow any of the course of events. I personally think the questions raised are not unlike some questions that were raised at the last Port Wardens meeting. So it would, I think we should have some answers to those questions, but we got them fairly late. So does anyone have any comments about how you would like to proceed?
I'd like to have those in writing. Answers to the questions in writing.
Okay. John, do you have any?
Well, I mean, I was trying to read through the comments from Michael Keenan, and I don't know if Lisa could walk us through that. I guess I felt like that would be helpful. But if she's not, if they were received in too short a time frame to do that, then you know.
I'm prepared to address the questions if you would like.
I tell you what, why don't we have, I assume that was Lisa Greco. Yeah, well, hi, Lisa. I'm sorry, didn't see you there. Why don't we have you respond to them? And then if we need any further information, we can proceed accordingly. So I would like to have your response because some of them were questions that I had last time, basically about intrusion in Eagle Alley and can we truncate that when you come forward as opposed to going backward. So why don't you please respond to those?
Sure. So the question was about the encroachment into Ego Alley. So first of all, I'd like to state that we follow MDE's guidelines, which allows new bulkheads to encroach no more than 18 inches into the adjacent body of water. And that is measured from the face of the existing bulkhead to the back of the new proposed bulkhead.
Lisa, if I can interrupt, that wasn't the question. The question is, are there alternatives to doing that?
Oh, alternatives. So the existing, I apologize, the existing bulkhead is a wooden sheet bulkhead. It's supported by 12-inch diameter wood piles in front of the wood bulkhead that has metal tiebacks that pass through the support piles, through the bulkhead to piles that are then buried under Newman Street. And it's similar for the adjacent properties of the Fleet Reserve as well as 110 Compromise Street. And the reason that we can't remove the existing bulkhead system to install a new one in place is that if we remove the piles and the sheeting, there's nothing to support the land behind it. So the new bulkhead system is a cantilever system that does not require the additional tiebacks. It's totally self-supporting. It's will be driven in, buried into the bottom of Ego Alley. It's a similar, exact same design as we used around the head of Ego Alley and the dinghy dock and along Dock Street. And additionally, we can't remove it because the bulkhead is part of a larger capital project to address tidal flooding. Currently, the water comes up through the storm drain system as well as over the existing bulkhead into Newman Street. The new bulkhead will support a seawall on top of it, a concrete cap, similar again to the design at the head of Ego Alley. And that will help to prevent waters from just flowing over top of Newman Street. The new pump station that's part of this larger capital project has 3 discharge pipes that will be under Newman Street and pass through the bulkhead. That also makes removing the old bulkhead not feasible and putting a new one with tiebacks in place because the discharge pipes will take up all the space behind the existing bulkhead with this new discharge pipe. So the new bulkhead will be driven first. It'll be a standalone bulkhead, a cantilevered system, and then the new pipes it'll be cut. The holes will be cut, and the new pipes pass through the new bulkhead system.
Okay, here's my question, Lisa. I'm not an engineer. You are an engineer. So you're telling the port wardens as an engineer,
Yes.
if we told you you could not come further into Ego Alley, there's not an engineering solution on earth that would keep that from happening. You don't have an alternative. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
No matter what the expense, you cannot keep from encroaching in Ego Alley? Is that what you're saying?
I can't say at no expense. It would be.
I mean, I know what you're trying to do. What we're trying to ask is, are there alternatives?
I went back to the design engineer, AECom, and was told, I got a written response from them that it would be a lot more expensive. It would be a lot more disruptive to not only Newman Street, but the adjacent properties, and that it would be a lot more time consuming, and our budget of wouldn't be within our current budget. So
Could you provide that letter to us?
absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or?
Well, the part that I was having, most of that I remember, Lisa, you actually covered a lot of that in the previous meeting. It's on the record, and I appreciate you going through it again. But I was trying to follow his question about 110 compromise, and I just didn't remember where compromise fit into this. I was trying to find it in the plans that we had, and I mean, that was the first part of his like under item 1, and
Yes.
we may have gotten into it other places too.
I have a, yes. So the question from the Mike Keenan was related to the bulk. So the proposed bulkhead is 60 feet wide, and 34 feet of it will run along the frontage of 110 Compromise Street, whereas only 4 feet will run behind the adjacent Fleet Reserve. And he was asking why we couldn't that they didn't have just 4 feet of bulkhead behind their property. And the reason for that is, again, this is part of a larger capital project to address tidal flooding. And the limiting elevation, we are tying into the same elevation as the back deck of the Fleet Reserve. The reason being that we could build a higher wall at the end of Newman Street, but if Ego Alley, if the water levels rise, it's just going to flood over the back deck of the Fleet Reserve and flood Newman Street anyway. So we're coming in at the same elevation as the back deck to the Fleet Reserve. On the other side of 110 Compromise, their boardwalk is up at that elevation, but the last 50 feet or so slopes down to Newman Street level. And so if we were only building a bulkhead for 4 feet behind their property, that leaves a lot of it below this level of protection that we're trying to achieve with the tidal flooding project.
Thank you. Are there any
Thank you.
other comments or questions?
How much further will it extend out to the north?
Sorry, I've got a comment or question. Just for clarification, Scott Anderson was absent for the first part of this hearing last month. Scott, have you gone back and reviewed all the files and listened to the recording?
I have, but I've not listened to the recording.
Okay, before this could be voted on for you to participate, come up to speed with all that.
Just had a question. What's up?
So- So Carrie, I just need to know how to put that in the minutes, because since Mr. Anderson wasn't at the meeting, and if he didn't listen to the recordings, do we count his vote? I just need to know.
I don't think you can count his vote unless he's listened to the recording and can say that he's fully informed on the project.
Okay, does anyone have any other comments? If not, I'm prepared to make a motion. We lay this on the table until the next month's meeting to vote on, until Scott has an opportunity to listen to the recording, and we have an opportunity for any other public comment based on Lisa's presentation from the city. So any other questions, comments?
Well, I guess I'd make a comment that we do have a quorum with the 3 of us that attended the last meeting, and I, like to respect Alderwoman Tierney's comment to, move forward with this. We already talked about the kind of these questions are kind of a rehash of what we talked about in the last meeting. I understand Scott, we'd like to bring him along, but this really holds for all these old business votes that we're having, not just this one. Of course, this is one that has maybe more discussion.
That's true, and that's what I was going to say. We could have Mr. Anderson abstain from all the votes. That's what I've been putting in the notes, but I just wanted to make sure that's the appropriate way to handle it.
Let's not make any assumptions about how people are going to vote.
Well, in his
So-
case, what I was asking, Assistant City Attorney Carey, was how to put him in since he wasn't at the meeting. I just want to make sure that because he wasn't there, we would put him as abstained, so he couldn't participate in the voting.
I understand.
Okay.
So I'm prepared to make the motion to delay till next week till I get a copy of that letter. But if anyone wants to, I'll make a motion that we delay until next month, the vote until next month, till I am able to review the letter that Lisa talked about. I don't hear a second. Do I hear another motion?
Well, I agree with you, Gene. Yeah, I mean, let's just go ahead and wait till the next meeting.
I'll take that as a second. Been moved, second, all in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
John votes no. Scott doesn't get to vote. So it's a 2-1 vote that we delay the decision until the voting on the final approval until next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the Merrill Walker application. We've had no public comments. I have no comment on that. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Been moved. I second it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's been approved. We now move to new business. The Lewis West Marital Trust on 11 Southgate. And I think Dan Larian is going to make that presentation. Anyone that's going to comment on this, I would like for them to join the meeting. Actually, we might as well join 1 and 2 so I can swear everyone in.
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Yes.
Mr. Anthony F. Christoph, I'm an attorney with offices in Annapolis. I represent the Lewis West Trust. Mr. Lewis is here with me in the same bunker, and you're correct, Mr. Larian is our expert witness. In the interest of time, perfectly happy for him to proceed and reserve the opportunity to ask some questions if I think he misses something.
Then I would like to, for all parties, for Dan Larian, David Lewis, Anthony Cressell to raise their right hand, swear to tell the truth to the Port Wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury.
I do.
Thank you very much. And let me mention in these next 2 applications, the staff reports will be admitted as part of the record as Exhibit 1. And the record will remain open until October the 27th, so we can hear public comments. We've already had a comment on this application from Jack. Sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. But we will make that part of the record as Exhibit 2. So, Mr. Larian, will you go ahead and present this? And to the extent that you know what the public comment is and can address those concerns, please do.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Port Wardens. My name is Dan Larian. I'm representing the Lewis West Marital Trust at 11 Southgate Avenue in Annapolis. For the record, I've been doing this 30 years with the Port Wardens. I've attended multiple meetings and processed many permits and drawings and applications with the Port Warden that have been accepted. I'm a graduate civil engineer from University of Maryland. I have a license in marine contracting, a home improvement license, a home builder license, and I'm a licensed elevator contractor. I've been doing marine construction for 40 years in the Annapolis and Maryland area. And I've been accepted as an expert witness in the court system in the state of Maryland to testify on behalf of matters similar to this. What we have is we have an existing pier that is 5. Well, let me back up. We
Mr.
posted
Chairman,
the
could I
sign.
interrupt and move Mr. Larian as an expert for the record?
I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis, would you repeat?
I'm sorry, it's Mr. Christoph. Mr. Chairman, we would move that Mr. Larian be accepted as an expert by the Board of Port Wardens.
He's accepted.
Thank you.
We posted public notice signs on the 11th on the water side and street side of the property. We took photographs and emailed those to Kevin Scott. He acknowledged that he had received them. We made public notice on the 12th, the morning at 9 a.m. at the Easton Post Office for all the property owners adjacent, showing on sheet 3 of drawing 3 of the application. What exists on the property currently is a 5 by 32 foot pier. And we have 2 mooring piles, excuse me, that are 59 feet channelward from the bulkhead. The one mooring pile on the east side of the property is out beyond the ladder line that we established and the harbor line. I mean, not the harbor line, the ladder line and the setback line. So what we're proposing to do is to take 9 feet off the existing pier. It's a 5 foot wide pier. And we're going to add a 3 by 45 foot finger pier. And we're going to install a elevator lift on the side of the pier, install a jet ski lift, and install a 4 foot 8 inch by 14 foot long kayak launch. We're going to remove the 2 mooring piles that are out in front of the pier to improve the waterway by 6 feet. The current encroachment of the mooring piles are 59 feet. Our proposed encroachment, we're asking for 53 feet. So we've taken into account that we're going to improve the navigational access to the waterfront in front of this property. These ladder lines that I've depicted have been presented to the port wardens at 1 Taney for Mr. Berge on a previous application, and they have been reviewed by Mike Meekins at Bay Engineering and been accepted and approved as how he would project those ladder lines. So beyond that, we meet all the setbacks. We have 22 feet of waterfront. We have a 5 foot setback on each side. It gives us a 12 foot building envelope. We have a 3 foot wide pier, and we have a boat that's 9 feet wide. So we will be 12 feet wide within our setback. The elevator lift attaches to the existing side of the pier, and there's no outboard piling, so there's no structure that's in that area, just a boat. The boat that's going to go on there is a Grady White, a 2850. It's a Freedom, and there's a personal watercraft lift that's going to have a 11 foot Avon with a 30 horsepower motor that's intended for that use. And I am aware of the comments from the adjacent property owners.
Any comment on those?
Well, I feel that by reducing the encroachment channelward, we've improved the water access and the navigational access, and our thoroughfare to come in and out of that pier is straight in, straight out. We're not going to go across the property to access that pier. The only way you mount an elevator lift is in and out straight. We don't make a corner, don't turn a corner onto the other properties to access it. In addition to that, there is aerial photography that shows a 40-foot sailboat that was in that slip for years and another boat that was tied alongside of that pier for years. And if that boat was there, they would have, their access would be impeded much more if we were to put a boat in that slip the way it exists now. So we've improved the waterfront by 6 feet.
Mr. Leonard, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm looking at drawing 4, and the answer is probably pretty simple. One of the pilings that I think you're trying to remove that is close to the harbor line appears to be on the adjacent property and Mr. Adair's property. Am I just misreading this?
That's correct. That is actually over the ladder line and in that waterfront of the adjacent property owner that we are going to remove.
So wouldn't that be his piling on his property? And does he approve of your removing a piling on his property?
To my knowledge, it was depicted in the application by the prior property owner to be removed and replaced in kind, which indicated that it was it came with the property when Mr. Lewis bought it.
But that begs the question of where, of where it's located now.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask Mr. Larian a question. Could we move into the record the photograph, aerial photograph to which he referred, and ask him whether in fact that depicts the historic use of this property and those 2 mooring pilings?
I did forward that to Kevin. And Kevin, did you forward that to the Port Wardens?
I did. I forwarded to the all the public comments that we'd received as of noon today, and the additional information all was forwarded by email to the board members.
Unfortunately, some of us are trapped into reviewing some of these things online.
Right.
So I didn't see that. But to your point, Mr. Lewis, it'll be made part of the record.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can I also ask that the application be made a part of the record?
The application is part of the record, yes.
I just want to be sure.
Yes.
And also ask Mr. Larian, he mentioned the previous owner of this property, that would be the Irvins. Is that correct, Mr. Larian?
Yes.
And you mentioned that the same lateral line essentially had been determined by the Board of Port Wardens to be the lateral lines for that project, notwithstanding that the mooring piling was in the same position as it is now.
To my knowledge, yes.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask also that the previous application, that is the Irvin application, be admitted as an exhibit.
It was included with the package I sent by email this afternoon.
Yes, so that has already been included. Any other questions from my fellow Port Wardens? John, you look like you're.
Yeah, I did not see the comment or comments for the, where did those come separately?
They came late today. And I just want to tell my fellow Port Wardens, when we receive late information that we're having a hard time enough with the virtual hearings, I need, I personally need time to absorb, digest, and think about things. So we did get those late.
Well, they were sent this afternoon. We received them by noon on the day of the hearing, which is the policy that was established and relayed to us by the city for how to do these virtual meetings. So I believe that we're in compliant with what we're supposed to do on our end.
We're compliant with receipt, not necessarily with decisions. So I'll stipulate that, Kevin. So John, you haven't seen those comments?
No, I read some comments that came in. I guess I missed those. I did not see those. So maybe I thought they were associated with one of the other applications.
It's a difficult, it's a difficult process squaring these virtual hearings with the paperwork received or not, in front of us or not.
Gene, I have a question about that. I mean, I'm glad you pointed out that concern about the piling. And I guess if we have a photo that shows that it was used as a piling for a boat tied up in that space, I still question. I mean, do we ask for permission from the adjacent property owner, or is that going to be problematic to do that, to have remove that piling? I agree that it makes sense to remove that piling, and I agree with what Dan was saying, is how you're improving the waterway.
I have no problem with the removal of it, except I'm just not very accustomed to going on someone else's property and removing stuff, whatever the chain of photographs and previous. So I would like to hear the adjacent property owner's view about removing the piling. Have you informed or discussed this with the adjacent property owner at all?
We notified him with the application and the drawing, and it's depicted in the drawing that pile is to be removed.
Okay, but you really haven't talked to him. It's up to him to examine this and look and see that you're going to go on his property and take a piling away. Is that
Well,
your
it's my
position?
understanding that the state owns the waterfront. You just own the right to use the waterfront.
I agree.
So it's not their property at this point. It's state property.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
I'd
this
still like to have their
piling
use.
is so clearly part of the system that makes up this pier. The previous application and all of our aerial photography confirms that this pylon goes with 11 Southgate because 9 Southgate, that's the adjacent property, has never had a system of pier and pilings that goes out here. So it should be without question that this is part of the 11 Southgate system of pier and pilings.
Why shouldn't it be? Why shouldn't it be?
Why shouldn't it be clear? It is clear. This is a non-question.
Clear in the previous application. Is it clear here?
It's clear in all our area of
I mean,
photography.
if you think that is a binding precedent?
The boat that moors at the end of this piling, at the end of this pier, has tied to those 2 pilings since the 60s.
Maybe they did it with the permission of the adjacent property owner. I don't know. Okay, I don't have any other questions or comments. We can.
Mr. Chairman, I have several general questions based on reading your previous opinions, just to be sure that we've covered the bases. If you have 30 seconds, if I can ask Mr. Larian whether he has an opinion whether this will render navigation too close or confined, the application.
No, sir. It will not render navigation. It will improve navigation.
All right. Do you think will it materially increase water pollution or erosion?
No, sir.
Will it impair marine life or wildlife, in your opinion?
No, sir.
Will it have an effect on or increase congestion in the waterways?
No, sir.
All right. And finally, do you have an opinion as to whether it will create a navigational hazard?
Will not create a navigational hazard because we're actually opening, we're shortening the distance that the currently encroaches by 6 feet.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our counsel, Carrie Berger, do you have any concern about removing a piling that is outside the lateral lines of this property and is in someone else's waterway, realizing the state owns the waterway?
The state owns it? Is there?
State owns all the waterway.
Right, but this isn't part of the letter that came from the Biddles, correct?
No.
I'm just sort of reading that now, and I know he kind of has a complaint. I just want to make sure there's not an overlap with it.
No, this is just the curiosity of the port wardens, because I don't think I've ever faced an applicant wanting to remove a piling that is outside of their lateral lines. Can I ask you to look into that? I'm prepared to.
Yeah, I will.
I'm prepared to make a motion that we delay a decision on this until next month, pending finding some advice.
James, the previous application, when it applied to remove and replace the pier in kind, the piling was actually inside the lateral line because that's a different part of the code for replacement in kind. The lateral lines were arranged to go outside that pile to make that pile fit within the lateral line. But the current code requires when we do improvements, we have to put the lateral lines in as we deplete it and put that pile outside the lateral line. So when the Irvins applied to remove and replace that pile, it was inside the lateral lines because that is a different code requirement.
That will be very helpful to Carrie in giving us her opinion.
Okay.
So I move that we lay this on the table for.
Well, Gene, it's.
So we're just hearing the information. Let me put it. Let me take that differently. We can't decide this until next month anyway. That's when the vote will be. And I'm just asking Carrie to give us input based on her legal opinion between now and then.
I will, and I will once I have more time to really review everything that came in today and the application, everything like that.
Yeah, and I want to assure the applicant that I think you do improve the waterway. I think it's, all makes logical sense to me, except I'm just kind of concerned about that piling being in someone else's potential waterway in case they needed some future development. I would think probably enhance it, but I'd just like a legal opinion. So are there any comments, any other information? If not, we will hold this record open until next month, where we will be available to make a decision. Any other comments from our port wardens? I don't want to run roughshod over this. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next application is Rick Dadio, 717 Chester Street. And again, on this application, let's see who's going to. Dan, you're going to present this one too.
Yes, sir.
You've already been sworn in, so we don't need to do that. And just for the record, we will, as I mentioned before, include the staff report in the record as Exhibit A, and also the comments by McGuckian and Beck, who both have filed comments on this. And to the extent then you want to address any of those in your presentation, we would be happy to hear that.
Yes, sir. I'm Dan Larian, representing Rick Dadio at 717 Chester Avenue in Annapolis. It's an existing 5-slip marina that we're going to remove in its entirety. It has a 6 by 70 foot pier. It has a 4 by 52 feet 4-inch L pier. I'm sorry, Gene, let me back up. I'm reading you the new work. The existing pier is 6 by 72, and the L pier is 4 by 68. There is 2 tapered 12-foot long finger piers to be removed, and there is 5 mooring piles to be removed. We're proposing to construct a 6 by 70 foot pier with a 4 by 52 feet 4-inch L pier, a 20-foot tapered finger pier, 11 mooring piles, a 10,000-pound boat lift, and a personal watercraft lift. You'll note that the one pile on the northeast side of the property will stay in the location where it is, and the proposed mooring piles and the end of the pier moves landward by 5 feet. There's an existing bulkhead there that we're going to replace, 18 inches channelward. It is 85 feet 6 inches long, and will tie into the adjacent property bulkhead on the Sears property, the Brian Sears property. We're proposing 3 mooring piles to be installed on the property line and intersect the Brian Sears property, which is noted as part of the deed to be allowed. The signs were posted on the 11th. We took photographs and sent them to Kevin. We put the notice out on the 12th, and we notified everybody on sheet 3. So we're proposing 4 wet slips and 1 lift slip. What we currently have on the property is 5 wet slips. So we haven't increased or decreased the amount of slips. We just added 1 boat lift to take in a slip on the inside of the L pier. Any questions?
Yeah, Dan, at the end of the day, is this going to look like drawing 11, which is the buffer management plan, but it shows a clean copy of what looks to me like the end game?
Number 6 is the final drawing. Sheet 6, drawing number 6. Number 11 is the same drawing, it just doesn't have the dimensions on it.
Yeah, so it'll end up like I'm sorry, visually it's just hard to, 6 is a little complicated for me because of all the notations.
Yes, sir. Yeah, 6 and 11 are the same drawing, it's just number 11.
Yeah, okay.
Not
So,
have,
so 11 is where you end up.
11 does not show the boat lift for some reason, because the buffer management plan focuses more on what the disturbance on land and not in the water.
Oh, it shows the jet ski lift, but not the boat lift.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, all right, yeah. I have no further questions. I have not, obviously, I mean, I'm sorry, it's not obvious. I have not had a chance to review the public comments, but we will have an opportunity before next month's meeting. But if there's anything in those comments, I don't know if you had a chance to see them
I
that
did.
you want to address, you're welcome to. If not, we will just review them.
So the corner of the L pier that exists to the face of the adjacent pier with the lift, the elevator lift, to the northeast of the property is 32 feet, the alleyway. And when we back up the L pier towards land, that dimension becomes 31 feet. And the boat lift that we're proposing is a 10,000-pound boat lift. So it's intended for a 24-foot boat that would be 8 feet wide. We've got many marinas in the city of Annapolis that have a 30-foot alleyway that have 40-foot boats that pass through it that are 16 feet wide. So the impact is minimal. Based on the exhibits that I found on Google Earth with prior photographs over the last 8 years, there's been multiple times where a boat has been moored on the inside of there where the proposed boat lift is. The idea of a boat lift, you don't have to paint your bottom and you can put your boat up in the water. And somebody that leaves their boat in the water has to put anti-fouling paint on it. So it's going to be much better for the environment to not have that anti-fouling paint leaching into the water, to have a boat that's unpainted on a lift. So that's the intention there. So I don't really think that we cause any more navigational problem for the adjacent property owner, because we've made little to no change other than a foot, which is marginal. And there's been boats, in fact, there was a barge back there at one time, but there's been multiple boats moored in that same spot where the lift is going to, proposed lift is going to go.
Okay, that's the end of my questions. Any other, John?
Yes, sir.
I have a question regarding the lateral lines. And I guess maybe the first part of this question is for Kevin. In the staff report, or the whatever it's called here, the memorandum, says under Title 15, the lateral line along the eastern side has been established by the existing pier and pilings which have legally existed prior to the Port Wardens regulations. And I don't know where the code has that kind of provision. Can you help me understand what that is getting, where that comes from?
Well, it's based on this property. The structures have already established their riparian rights, so they have to be taken into account. So you can't have the lateral line going through, the middle of an existing pier, because that pier already has established its rights to that area of the waterway.
That's not my understanding of Title 15. I mean, I would hope you would reference the code in making these comments, because I don't think that's the way the code is written. And I know from previous discussions, previous hearings, port warding hearings, there have been cases where the lateral line went through existing structures because they were there before the lateral lines. But you still construct the lateral lines according to Title 15, is my understanding.
I don't agree with that. I think it's been routine that lateral lines are guided by where the existing structures are. They have to be taken into account.
Maybe we get a legal opinion on that.
And I think we should look back at prior hearings, because I know this came up in the Newport SAYC hearing.
Sorry, I was pulling up Title 15. I tend to agree with Kevin on this, but I want to double check and make sure I'm not missing anything.
Sure. I mean, there was another example on Horn Point earlier this year, or maybe it was late last year. Similar situation. I think the 11 Southgate back in 2017, it was looked at that way. Although I think the board decided that since it was replacement of kind, they didn't address the lateral line issue. SIYC may have been an issue, but I mean, this has come up. I mean, there's many examples if you delve through the records of I mean, a lot of what exists throughout the city are piers that existed prior to 1980, which is the, you know, the magic date, so to speak. And
That's correct, Kevin. But if you look at 15, 18, 110, non-conforming uses or structures,
But we're not building a non-conforming structure. We're building it to conformity now. We've
It's
stepped
con-
it off the
it's-
ladder line.
it's non-conforming with a Title 15 ladder line.
For section 110, for section 100 it pertains to if you're going to comply to with the ladder lines, and we've moved that pier off the ladder line. We're not asking to build anywhere in the setback. And
Yeah,
furthermore,
I'm
the
just-
Brian Sears project permit has been approved and was issued today with that ladder line that you accepted for him to do the adjacent property owners. So we picked up on that ladder line and carried it over onto our property because the properties abut each other. So if you already approved that ladder line,
I'm talking about the eastern ladder line.
he's
Okay.
referring to the other side, but
the eastern ladder
And-
line is
and-
correct.
And I think on terms of the western ladder line, we said we didn't make a judgment on the ladder line because we had the if we look back at the findings, we had the interpretation that you don't actually move the ladder line, you just agree on being able to construct in a, you know, changing your buildable area. The Title 15 doesn't talk about moving ladder lines. It talks about you getting approval to kind of not really ignore the ladder line, but build, you know, closer into the ladder line.
Right.
But and I think our finding just, we said, we're not going to make, you know, we're not going to make any, the finding doesn't address the ladder line. We just we approved the application because there was permission to build where they were building. And so I don't have a problem with the western side of this design, because I know you're right that was already, you know, there was a adjacent property owner agreement on what can be done. I'm more concerned about the eastern side of the property. We don't have a drawing that has a Title 15 based ladder line for the eastern side of the property. And I'm concerned about going forward, we were reviewing this application without having that.
Well,
Because
that's why we're leaving
the
that
way
one
I
out.
understand 15, 18, 110, we need to have that.
The poly that's left out there is to be replaced in kind. It doesn't move left or right or forward or back. So that sets a precedence of where our building envelope is.
But the pier, dock, whatever, is also part of the existing. And I don't know where, problem is because I don't see a Title 15 ladder line, I don't know where it goes in relation to the existing structures. If everything's within the 5-foot setback, that's fine then. But I don't see that on here. You've been very good at drawing Title 15, you know, ladder lines for many applications. I don't see that on this one, and that's my concern.
Oh, you mean as far as the progression down the shoreline?
How you draw, yeah, but I mean, I don't want to go through
I
it,
can
but right
provide
before
that.
110, it, you know, gives a prescription on how to draw a ladder line.
Yeah, I can provide that
And-
before the next meeting.
And if this is all within the 5-foot setback from that, then I have no concern. I had concern with the text that was in the staff report that said, because we have existing structures, then everything's within the ladder line. And that's not the case. If you read the code, it acknowledges that things could be beyond the ladder line, and then you have to replace in kind.
Right.
But it
That
may be
refers
only
to
the
the
piling
line.
is beyond the ladder line and you're replacing in kind, so that's fine. I just need to see the ladder lines.
All right, I'll give you a progression down the shoreline of the ladder line.
Thank you.
Very soon, within the next few days.
And I'd like the attorney to look at this issue, not for this application, because maybe this isn't going to be an issue in this application, but I think the statement that Kevin makes is not correct according to our city code.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay, so you will have Carrie's input and Dan's lateral lines by next month.
Yes, sir.
So any other issues, comments on this application? If not, I would like to express my appreciation. And John, thank you for your, oh, go ahead.
I did it, just to point out, we don't have to get into this now because we haven't had a chance to really review the public comment, but I did look through it kind of quickly. And I know there was some public comment about notice, stating inappropriate notice. And I just, I hope we can kind of sort through that and see what notice was given and what's required and make sure that was done appropriately.
Yeah,
I think Kevin can do that.
confirm that the notice requirements by the code were met. The person who commented on the notice, I think she was pointing out that the code is unclear or something or another, but the notice was met according to the code, and she clearly was aware of the application early on. So there was no flaw in the notification.
Okay. That being said, if there's no other comment, do we have any other business to come before the Port Wardens? I would like to express my appreciation for the public's patience as well as my fellow Port Wardens, and I appreciate all of your input. And we look forward to getting the additional information on all the applications, including the ones that we have delayed to next month and these. So thank you very much. And if we have no other comments, we are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.